So we just finished the test flight of the Allure this afternoon, and of course we're both really impressed with it. I'd like to talk a little bit about what brought on the design. What made you decide to do another monoplane? Because you got several successful designs. What makes this one better? What makes this different? Why the Allure?
You know, anytime you design anything, anytime I design anything, really, it's a lot of it is inspiration. Most of my designs start on the long journey back from the Nationals. Season's over with for me, basically, for the most part. We've crammed to get another season in. We've crammed to get another airplane finish for Brett and I. And flying the Valiant for 4 years, I really never stopped testing on it, tuning on it, evaluating it, making changes to it. You know, what really drives all designs, number one, is the power available, the source of power available, and the patterns. And you kind of meld those two together with, you know, all my airplanes are based on a successful or a succession of thought processes. And now that we have so much power, we're able to have more flexibility with the design. And I realized with the Valiant, although it was set up to fly the, I forget which one it is, 09, we had like 13 snaps on the F pattern or something. It was something ridiculous. So I tried to do my best to make the airplane more agile, but with doing so, it lost some of the stability. So while Brett could fly the hell out of it, I had a real hard time with the way that I fly to take advantage. It wasn't an easy airplane to fly smooth. And having some experience with some of the guys that flew the Valiant with the contra drive, I knew I had the right solution for that problem with the yaw instability, and having dealt with my first biplane design, the Shark was notoriously unstable in yaw. And everybody's thought process on how do you get this stability was basically concentrating on the wrong end of the airplane. And once I realized that, once I fixed the Shark and realized what the problem was with the contra setup in general, it made it a lot easier to design the airplane. And in fact, it made the shortcomings that were showing its ugly head with the contra drive were always there, whether you were flying a single prop, electric or glow to begin with. And I knew this, but it wasn't quite as evident. And whenever I fixed it for the contra, it just made it even better for any other power system you use. So now it allows me to run the same thrust settings on any version. That way I don't have to make, you don't have to take and put 2 degrees of down thrust in your airplane anymore, or 3 degrees of right thrust. You run the same thrust setting no matter what version you run. And one of the most important facets of that design that I learned when I was doing the design, I was able to take the Valiant and cut the rudder and fin off of it and rebuild it. I put probably 2 or 3 different rudder and fins on the Valiant. I put at least 5 different rudder and fins on the Shark, and experimented with thrust, experimented with CG, incidents, and just came up with basically a formula that worked for pretty much anything you tried it on. One of the most important aspects to the contra drive especially was the selection of the airfoil and the section for the fin and the rudder. That was really the eureka moment when I ran across that with the biplanes. That's what made the Allure a special airplane, because I was finally able to compartmentalize my information, understand it better, and put the settings into practice towards a new design that was designed on much firmer knowledge. All my other airplanes are very good flying airplanes, but the difference between an airplane that can do a knife edge Humpty bump on the bottom and go right back up the same line. And an airplane that can't is tenths of a degree, percentages of where the CG's at according to relations to the MAC, and position of the wing, the tenths of a degree on thrust.
So we know that we're bound by 2 meters. 2 meters wide, 2 meters long, and the pictures just don't describe how big the Allure really truly is. So obviously, in order to do that, you had to go up and stay within those confines. What does that really provide to the airplane as far as making it so huge?
If you get on a boat in the water, and I hate to simplify it this way, but if you jump in on 150, a Cessna 172, and fly in rough weather, and then you jump into, you know, maybe a Bonanza or something a little bit bigger, or then you get into a, you know, a small passenger jet, they all take that rough air, and the bigger the airplane is, the easier it flies through that stuff. And it's basically mass displacement is the only way I can describe it. A bigger ship travels through rough waters better. And it kind of helps us in both ways, where we need the side area and we need the mass for the braking, to aid with the braking of the airplane, and for the complex maneuvers we're flying now. When you put a thing on a knife edge, your rudder's got to be very powerful. And you know, the problem with all that is having an airplane mass produced where you can maintain a certain level of I guess a certain percentage of weight where you can vary, and still the average model to put that airplane together without having to buy titanium screws and, you know, speed controls with that will burn up because they're using them too small, or motors that are not really meant for the airplane because they're an ounce lighter. All those things have to come together. But really, the airplane punches a hole in the sky. And if you displace the air correctly and the airplane set up nice, it helps you. If you don't, it's really, you know, the biggest myth is that a large airplane flies terrible in the wind. And it's just the opposite. A large airplane set up well flies better in the wind. The wind should only enhance how well the airplane flies. Some of my best trimming work is done when I got a 15 or 20 mile an hour crosswind, because it tells me exactly if that airplane is truly set up to fly. Anything flies good when it's calm. So that's kind of where, you know, the larger airplane has a better presentation. You can see it better. The judges can see it better. You can fly it slower, a little closer in. But it does require a lot more effort from the modeler to set it up light. It requires more effort from the manufacturer and the designer and all that stuff to be able to produce an airplane that anybody can make weight with. That's the hardest part of it. You know, everything has advantages and disadvantages, but the newest designs are so specific to F3A now that kind of there's nothing available, anything more for AMA that really was designed with them in mind. And the Allure kind of rides that fence between being able to be an F3A airplane and a nice, solid, stable platform for AMA airplane, AMA style airplanes. It's not the Alfirma. It's not the Shark. I mean, I can go up there and do pinwheels with the Shark. I can make a 4-inch loops with the Shark. I mean, a 4-foot loops with the Shark on knife edge. The Alfirma is not quite as agile, but it also rides. You get the
Alfirma.
Yeah, the Alfirma flies kind of like. It has not quite as much agility as the Shark, but it's also a smoother flying airplane like the Allure, the larger monoplane. So it's kind of a cross between the two of those. And the Allure, on the other hand, has much more agility than your average monoplane on knife edge. And the rudder power is really very good. And you know, I hear a lot of people talking about the rudder power of these airplanes, how this rudder is You know, you can't hardly touch it, and it's, you know, you got to run 80% expo on your rudder. People confuse rudder power and rudder sensitivity. And rudder power is when you can apply the rudder at any stick position and it's a linear field. Rudder sensitivity is when you got to barely touch the rudder and it's jumping all over the sky. Well, what happens is when you take that same airplane and try to do a complex maneuver like a knife edge lay down aid or something that requires precision with that power, it's not capable of doing it. You got mixes all over the place, and you can't stay ahead of the airplane. So, you know, if you looked at the shark flying and you watched how easy it was to get that thing jumping all over the sky with the rudder, it's really ridiculous. But I never considered it rudder power. I always considered it the rudder was too sensitive to fly the airplane. Mm-hmm. So that was a design flaw, and I had to come up with a solution, which I eventually did. And I use that knowledge to put toward the Allure, to where you have some agility and you have stability, and you're able to mold those two together. And if you want rudder power to do the knife edge, you know, to do the golf ball on knife edge in the F pattern, it does it with ease, no problem whatsoever. But you know, it's not the shark. So there's a fine line you have to cross there, and you know, doing all the experiments I did with the Valiant, I realized that you can get too small with the fin and rudder and too big with the fin and rudder. You get over a certain size and it actually starts deteriorating the rudder power. It's not about the size of the rudder, it's about the efficiency of the rudder and whether it's in the right ballpark and the right size for that particular airframe. It's a balance of rudder, fin side area to fuselage side area. And that's where the magic's at. And the CG position of the wing also has a lot to do with that. The bigger the fuselage is, the further forward you have to run the CG. The fuselage now, they're contributing to lift, and it's just like a wing. So that's all pieces of the puzzle that, you know, can't really go in depth in, because I can't really explain it yet. I just know it. I've experienced it, felt it, worked with my designs on it. I haven't really been able to make sense of it to explain it to somebody. I just feel it and I know it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to even quantify.
You know, we talk a lot about how when people are adding the contra drive to their airplanes, they're putting strakes everywhere and this, that, and the other, and flaring the trailing edge of the rudder. What makes the Allure, just generally, what makes the Allure different to where we don't have to do any of that stuff for this airplane? It just flies great with the contra straight out of the box without any of that.
Well, you know, I was a little harsh on the contra guys when they first come out with that, and because I knew what the answer was to those problems. And I tried to kind of lead them in the right direction, but they want to get lost in the magic of the contra drive and the engineering behind P factor and, you know, torque and all the other stuff. And that's great for engineers. I'm not an engineer, I'm a mechanic. You know, I fix things. I work on cars for a living. So as a mechanic, to make money, you look for the first, fastest, easiest, logical solution, and you take a stab at it with experience. You know, you have your experience, and you look at everything it can't be. And when you rule all those things out, there's only a couple of things it can be. And you work on that. I don't get lost in the hocus pocus of the magic, because I've designed and trimmed too many airplanes to know that there really isn't any. It's usually just a bad setup. And I'm not saying that the guys out there with all the fins and the canalizers and all that stuff have bad setups. I look at some designs out there that kind of cracks me up. Everything ever invented to put on an airplane, it's stuck on the airplane. And I'm thinking, you haven't sorted out the airplane, and you're sticking all these things on the airplane, creating more problems. So the Allure is just set up more refined, and it doesn't need the strakes and the flow straighteners and the stabilizer rudders and all those things on there. I'm not saying that they don't enhance an airplane or help an airplane or anything like that. But I'm not going to run out there and copy anybody else's train of thought. I mean, I have my own logic. I have my own thought process that I'm going to stick on and stay on because it works for me. Who can argue with Christoph? And he's 37-time world champion, you know. He comes out with a canalizer, and everybody runs and puts a canalizer on there. Yeah, Christoph probably spent years developing that, and they just go and stick it on their airplane, not knowing anything about it. So, while I agree it probably aids the rudder, I know why it does it, and I can't tell anybody why. You know, I don't want to tell anybody why it does it because number one, they're not going to believe me. Number two, they don't have enough experience or knowledge to argue with me about it, but they will, you know. Mm-hmm. Even though I can demonstrate it, I can demonstrate the knife edge video you see with the Valiant. There's not an airplane alive or designed with a canalizer that can do that. I don't have a canalizer. So, you know, airplane setup is critical in those areas to get purity out of an airplane.